Sometimes life puts us in situations we could never imagine, situations where the people we love the most abandon us when we need them the most. Today's story on Elder Tales Stories is about a mother whose own son left her at the hospital, and what she did next shocked everyone. This is a story of pain, courage, and an unbelievable turn of events. It was supposed to be an ordinary morning. The sunlight spilled gently through the hospital windows, casting a warm glow over the sterile white walls. Mrs. Eleanor James, a 68-year-old widow, sat quietly in the waiting room, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her purse. Her heart was heavy, not just with the fear of her diagnosis, but with the silent hope that her only son, Michael, would be there when she needed him the most. She had called him the night before, pleading for him to pick her up after the checkup. "It's just a small appointment," she had said. "I'll be fine, but I'd feel better if you were here," Michael had promised. His voice was calm, almost soothing, and she had hung up with a faint smile. But promises, Eleanor was about to learn, can sometimes be the cruelest form of betrayal. The hours passed slowly. Eleanor shuffled nervously in her chair, glancing at the door every few minutes. Other patients came and went, but there was no sign of Michael. Her chest tightened with anxiety. Each tick of the clock seemed louder than the last, echoing her growing fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Eleanor's appointment ended. She stepped out into the hospital lobby, her eyes scanning the crowd. The parking lot beyond was empty of familiar faces. Panic began to rise in her chest. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking. No missed calls, no messages. And then she saw it. A message from Michael, time-stamped nearly an hour ago. "Mom, I got busy. I can't make it today. Figure it out yourself." Eleanor froze. Her heart sank as if a stone had been placed squarely on her chest. Busy with what? She wondered. That her own mother was left stranded after a hospital visit. The words blurred before her eyes, a mix of tears and disbelief clouding her vision. She stood there for a moment, stunned, unable to comprehend the betrayal. Michael, the boy she had nurtured, sacrificed everything for, who had been her pride and joy, had left her alone, at the hospital, with no plan, no apology, no concern, just a cold, dismissive text. For a moment, Eleanor felt a rush of anger, sharp and searing. She had given everything for him. Sleepless nights when he was sick, years of devotion, even putting her own health on hold for his happiness. And now he could abandon her with such careless cruelty. Tears ran down her cheeks. Not just from hurt, but from the betrayal that cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. She found a bench in the lobby, sitting down, her hands clutching her knees as if to hold herself together. Her mind raced, 1,000 questions colliding at once. Why would he do this? Is he angry with me? Has he been hiding something? It wasn't just the abandonment, it was the shocking realization that she might not know her son at all. All the years of trust and love felt suddenly fragile, like a delicate vase shattered on cold tile. Hours passed. Eleanor tried calling Michael, texting him, even reaching out to old family friends, but no one seemed to know where he was. It was as if he had vanished, leaving a hollow emptiness that echoed through her chest. Her first instinct was despair. She imagined herself sitting on that hospital bench forever, waiting for someone who would never come. But, as the minutes turned to hours, a quiet, simmering determination began to replace the shock. Eleanor wiped her tears and took a deep breath. If Michael wouldn't help her, she realized, she would have to help herself. She had always been independent, resilient, and strong, even when life had knocked her down. And now, faced with abandonment, she would have to summon every ounce of courage she had left. Eleanor began by figuring out the basics. She called a car service, arranging a ride back home. As she waited, she allowed herself to think not about the betrayal itself, but about what this moment revealed. Michael's text wasn't just carelessness. It hinted at a growing distance she hadn't noticed before. Something had changed, and she intended to find out what. By the time she arrived home, night had fallen. The streets were quiet. The city bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Eleanor entered her home, feeling both exhaustion and a strange sense of liberation. She was alone, but she was alive. She was capable, and more than that, she was determined. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, a notebook open before her. She began to write, not just her thoughts and fears, but a plan. She would uncover why Michael had abandoned her. She would confront him, and she would do so on her terms. Not in tears, not in helplessness, but with clarity, courage, and if necessary a shocking revelation that would leave him speechless. Eleanor's mind raced with possibilities. Maybe Michael was struggling with something he hadn't told her. Maybe he had secrets she needed to uncover. Or maybe he had been careless all along, taking her love and presence for granted. Either way, she realized, the power had shifted. For too long, she had been the one at his mercy. Now, the tables were turning. She thought back to her youth, to the lessons her own mother had taught her. Strength isn't just in your body, it's in your spirit. Stand tall, even when the world abandons you. Those words echoed in her mind, fortifying her resolve. She wasn't just a mother betrayed, she was a woman reclaiming her dignity. As Eleanor prepared for bed, a mix of exhaustion and anticipation enveloped her. She didn't know exactly what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this: her story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. And whatever Michael had done, whatever secrets lay hidden, Eleanor would face it head-on, because sometimes, the greatest shock isn't what life does to us, it's what we decide to do in response. The next morning, Eleanor woke to an emptiness she could almost taste. The house was quiet, almost eerily so, and the absence of Michael's presence sore. Even the hint of concern gnawed at her. She moved through her home mechanically, brewing tea, checking messages, and thinking, how could her own son, the one she had devoted her life to, leave her stranded like yesterday? The thought was like a dull ache in her chest, one that refused to subside. Her first instinct was to call him again, but she paused, staring at the phone in her hand. Something in her gut told her this wasn't just a careless oversight. There was something deeper, something she hadn't seen. She swallowed hard and decided today she would find out the truth. Eleanor began her day with small tasks, carefully pretending normalcy to the neighbors who occasionally peeked in, unaware of her inner turmoil. She ran errands alone, a simple grocery trip turning into an emotional battle. People greeted her warmly, but her mind was elsewhere. Every smile from a stranger felt hollow. Every casual conversation a reminder of her son's absence. It wasn't just loneliness, it was betrayal. And betrayal, Eleanor realized, had a strange way of sharpening one's instincts. She began asking subtle questions. Neighbors, old friends, even Michael's colleagues. Did anyone know why he hadn't shown up? Did he mention any plans? Did something happen that she should know about? Everywhere she turned, Eleanor hit walls of silence or vague excuses. People shrugged, shook their heads, or muttered, I don't know. Maybe he was busy. But Eleanor's intuition told her differently. This wasn't about being busy. This was deliberate. By mid-afternoon, Eleanor decided to check Michael's apartment. She didn't want confrontation, not yet, but she needed answers. The elevator ride up was torturous. Each floor that ticked past, her heart raced faster. She knocked on his door, heart pounding, waiting for a response. When no one answered, she peered through the slightly ajar door. The apartment was meticulously clean, eerily organized, almost too perfect, but something felt off. Papers neatly stacked on the desk, receipts in order, yet the mailbox, bulging with unopened letters, hinted at a life Eleanor didn't understand. Then she saw it, a small envelope tucked beneath a pile of papers. Her name was written in Michael's handwriting, but the content made her blood run cold. Inside, a note, brief and cryptic. Don't try to contact me. Some things you cannot understand. It's for your own good. Eleanor felt a cold shiver run down her spine. For my own good. She had raised him, nurtured him, protected him. How could her own son suggest that leaving her alone was better for her? The note reeked of secrets that had been carefully hidden for years. Anger flared inside her. Not just the anger of being abandoned, but the burning need to uncover the truth. She refused to sit idle, refused to let Michael's indifference dictate her life. This was her turning point. She would no longer be the passive mother waiting for a son who had chosen to vanish. Eleanor began her investigation quietly. She contacted old friends of Michael, people he hadn't seen in years. She dug through social media, carefully tracing clues from pictures and posts, piecing together a picture of his life that she had never truly known. And what she discovered shocked her to the core. Michael had been hiding more than just his daily routines. He had a secret life, one filled with dangerous associations, shady financial dealings, and people Eleanor didn't recognize. Her son, the boy she had imagined as kind and reliable, was living a life that threatened everything she held dear. The realization hit her hard. It wasn't just neglect. Michael had been deliberately keeping her in the dark. The betrayal was bigger than she had imagined, and it stirred something fierce inside her. A need not just for answers, but for control. She would face this not as a helpless mother, but as a woman who would protect herself at any cost. That evening, Eleanor sat by the window, the city lights flickering like distant stars. She made a plan, not reckless, but methodical. She would confront Michael, but she would do it carefully. First, she needed to understand the full extent of what he was hiding. Then, she would act. Her heart, though bruised, felt strangely empowered. She was alone, yes, but she was no longer powerless. Every text she sent, every call she made, every silent observation became part of a growing strategy. She would expose the truth. She would reclaim her dignity. And when the time came, Michael would have no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. The days passed in a mix of tension and anticipation. Eleanor discovered more about Michael's secret dealings, hidden debts, connections with people she could barely trust, and a life of deception carefully veiled behind polite smiles. Each revelation fueled her resolve. She realized that her son's betrayal had been a catalyst, painful, yes, but necessary. She wasn't just a mother abandoned at the hospital. She was a force to be reckoned with. A woman who had been pushed to the edge and had found strength she didn't know she possessed. And deep down, she knew that when the moment came, the world and Michael would see that strength in full. As night fell, Eleanor prepared herself mentally. She would not act rashly. She would gather all the pieces of the puzzle before confronting her son. But one thing was certain. The betrayal, the abandonment, and the secrets could no longer dictate her life. She was ready to reclaim it, and the shock of what she planned to do next would leave everyone, including Michael, speechless. For Eleanor, the struggle was far from over, but unlike before, it was no longer about helplessness, it was about empowerment, strategy, and an unwavering determination to face the truth, no matter how painful or shocking it might be. Eleanor had spent days observing, listening, and gathering information. Every call, every note, every social media post had become a piece of a puzzle that would finally reveal the truth behind her son's betrayal. She no longer felt helpless or abandoned. She felt empowered. The pain of yesterday had transformed into a quiet, simmering determination. Her house, once a sanctuary of comfort and nostalgia, had become a command center. On the dining table lay stacks of papers, receipts, and photographs she had collected over the past week. Her laptop hummed quietly, displaying a spreadsheet she had created, mapping out Michael's movements, contacts, and potential vulnerabilities. Every detail mattered. Every hidden corner of his life was now within her reach. Eleanor knew she couldn't confront him blindly. She had to be strategic. Michael's life, she realized, was entangled with people who could be dangerous if provoked. She would need evidence, irrefutable proof of his secret dealings and neglect. And more importantly, she would need an audience for the revelation. To ensure the full weight of his betrayal would be felt, she began by reaching out discreetly to Michael's colleagues, pretending to be a concerned relative, asking harmless questions. Piece by piece, she built a picture of his deception, financial mismanagement, lies to friends and neighbors, and promises broken in the most callous ways. Every revelation fueled her resolve. Every lie he had told became another brick in the wall. She was building a wall he could not hide behind. But Eleanor also had to be careful. Michael was clever. He had lived a double life for years. She couldn't afford a misstep that would tip him off. She needed patience, cunning, and precision, and she had all three in abundance. The turning point came one evening when she discovered a hidden folder on Michael's laptop, accidentally left unlocked during a brief visit to his apartment. It contained documents and photographs that revealed the full extent of his deception. Illegal transactions, secret accounts, and meetings with people Eleanor would never have imagined him associating with. She felt a mixture of shock and vindication. The son she had loved, the boy she had protected, was not the man she had imagined, but the betrayal did not break her, it ignited her. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt completely in control. She could finally act, and her plan began to crystallize in her mind. Eleanor decided the confrontation would be public, yet subtle. She would invite Michael under the pretense of reconciliation, unaware that she had already gathered all the evidence to expose his lies. Her goal was not just to make him realize his mistakes, it was to make him understand, deeply and irrevocably, the consequences of abandoning her. The day arrived. Eleanor prepared meticulously. Her house was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. She rehearsed the conversation, anticipating every excuse, every lie, every deflection Michael might use. She wasn't just a mother confronting her son, she was a strategist confronting an adversary. When Michael arrived, His casual smile and faint concern made Eleanor's blood boil. He had expected tears, weakness, perhaps guilt, but not the composed, deliberate force he was about to face. She welcomed him calmly, offering tea as though nothing were amiss. But beneath that calm exterior, Eleanor's mind raced. She had set the stage perfectly, all the evidence collected, the witnesses ready, the emotional weight building. Michael had no idea what was coming. She started, slowly, recounting his abandonment at the hospital. Her voice was steady, controlled, each word deliberate. Michael shifted uncomfortably, glancing away, expecting a confrontation he had imagined would be emotional but weak. He was wrong. Eleanor's pain was there, yes, but it was transformed into clarity, authority, and strategy. Then came the reveal. Eleanor laid out the evidence she had gathered. The secret accounts, the shady contacts, the lies he had told friends and colleagues. She spoke slowly, allowing each revelation to sink in. Watching the shock spread across Michael's face, he opened his mouth to speak, but Eleanor held up a hand. "Not yet," she said firmly. "Listen first. Understand what your actions have caused." Michael's face turned pale. He realized, too late, that the woman he had underestimated was no longer the fragile mother he thought he could ignore. She had become a force, one born from betrayal, resilience, and righteous anger. Eleanor didn't yell, she didn't beg, she simply presented the facts, letting the truth speak for itself. Each secret, each lie, each act of neglect, stacked like stones in front of him, impossible to ignore or defend. The power dynamic had shifted completely by the time Eleanor finished. Michael was speechless, trapped by his own misdeeds. The shock wasn't just in her revelations, it was in the realization that she had outsmarted him, anticipated his moves, and turned his own life against him without a single raised voice. And then came the final blow. Eleanor revealed that she had shared the evidence with a few trusted colleagues and family friends, not to shame him, but to ensure accountability. Michael could no longer hide behind excuses, and he knew it. The son who had once abandoned her now faced the full weight of his choices. Eleanor's eyes softened not with forgiveness, but with clarity. "I wanted you to understand," she said quietly. "Not just for me, but for yourself. You cannot walk away from life's responsibilities and expect no consequences. You cannot abandon those who love you without paying the price." Michael remained silent, broken in a way that words could not mend. He had never imagined his mother could wield such strength, such precision, such authority. The tables had turned completely. That night, Eleanor sat alone in her living room, a strange mix of exhaustion and triumph washing over her. She had faced the betrayal, uncovered the secrets, and asserted her strength. She was no longer just a mother abandoned at the hospital. She was a woman who had reclaimed her power, her dignity, and her voice. And deep down, she knew that when the final chapter came, it would be nothing short of shocking. Not just to Michael, but to everyone who had underestimated her. For Eleanor, the plan had succeeded, the struggle had transformed into empowerment, and the story was far from over. The next step would bring the ultimate confrontation, a revelation so powerful that it would leave everyone, including Michael, speechless. The following morning, Eleanor felt a strange mix of calm and anticipation. The storm of emotions that had raged inside her for days had settled into a focused clarity. Michael had seen some of the consequences of his actions, but the full revelation, the one that would make the truth undeniable, was yet to come. She had arranged a small gathering at her home, not a party, not a confrontation in anger, but a setting where the truth could speak for itself. A few trusted neighbors, a couple of Michael's colleagues, and a family friend she knew would be discreet but impactful, were invited. Eleanor wanted witnesses not to humiliate, but to ensure that the reality of his actions was undeniable. When Michael arrived, he found his mother calm, composed, and radiating an authority he had never seen before. He had expected anger, tears, or desperation, but instead, he faced a woman who had transformed her pain into power. Eleanor greeted him politely, offering tea, and gesturing to the small group in the living room. "I asked some people to join us," she said softly. "They are here not to judge, but to help you understand the consequences of your actions." Michael's face paled. He hadn't anticipated witnesses. He opened his mouth to protest, but Eleanor raised her hand gently. "Please, just listen first." Then, she began. Slowly, deliberately, she recounted the events of the hospital day, the abandonment, the messages, the betrayal. Her voice was steady, each word carrying the weight of pain, resilience, and truth. She did not raise her voice. She did not beg. She simply narrated what had happened. The room was silent. Every listener leaned in, captivated not by drama, but by the sheer gravity of Eleanor's story. They could feel the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the courage that had transformed a mother's despair into unshakable strength. Then came the reveal. Eleanor presented the evidence she had meticulously gathered, the secret financial dealings, the hidden accounts, the lies Michael had told friends and colleagues, and his deliberate abandonment of her. She passed copies to the guests, who glanced at the documents with expressions ranging from disbelief to shock. Michael's attempts to explain, to excuse, fell flat. Every lie he had told had been uncovered, every secret laid bare. He realized, too late, that he could no longer hide behind charm, excuses, or manipulation. The very life he had tried to keep hidden was now illuminated under the harsh light of truth. Eleanor's voice softened as she spoke directly to him. I raised you with love, sacrifice, and trust, and yet, you abandoned me when I needed you most. You lied, you hid, and you betrayed that trust. But I am not powerless. I have faced the truth, and I have acted. Now, you must face it too. The room was quiet, the only sound the faint rustle of papers, as Michael tried to comprehend the extent of the revelations. He looked at his mother, and for the first time, truly saw her not as the woman who had raised him, but as a force of nature, unyielding and unstoppable. Eleanor continued, her voice calm, yet commanding. The choice is yours, Michael. You can accept responsibility, change your ways, and rebuild the trust you have broken. Or you can continue to hide. But no, this you will no longer dictate my life, nor the lives of those who care about me. Tears welled in Michael's eyes, but they were no longer tears of defiance, they were tears of realization. He had underestimated the very person he thought he could ignore, take for granted, or control. He had believed his mother's love was unconditional and passive. Now he understood it was neither passive nor unconditional. It was powerful, discerning, and transformative. Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure she had not known she could feel. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the struggle they had, all led to this moment. She had confronted the truth, exposed it, and asserted her dignity. Michael's shock and humility were testament enough that she had achieved what she had set out to do. The guests slowly began to leave, leaving Eleanor and Michael alone. She looked at him, her eyes steady. I hope you've learned something today, she said quietly, not just about me, but about life, responsibility, and respect. You cannot abandon the people who love you, and expect no consequences. Michael nodded, speechless. He realized that no apology could erase the pain he had caused, but the confrontation had opened a door for accountability, growth, and, perhaps eventually, reconciliation. He saw the woman his mother had become resilient, wise, and fearless, and he knew he could never underestimate her again. That night, Eleanor sat by the window, the city lights shimmering like distant stars. She reflected on the past days, the abandonment, the struggle, the plan, and the ultimate revelation. She felt a sense of triumph, yes, but also peace. She had reclaimed her strength, faced betrayal head-on, and turned pain into power. Eleanor smiled softly. The story wasn't just about a son abandoning his mother. It was about resilience, courage, and the power of truth. She knew life would continue to throw challenges her way, but now she was ready for them, stronger than ever before. And somewhere in the distance, Michael understood that the greatest shock wasn't the exposure of his secret sit, was the realization that his mother, the woman he had left behind, had become unstoppable. For Eleanor, the journey had ended, but the lesson remained. Betrayal can hurt, but strength, courage, and determination can transform that pain into a force that no one, not even a son, can ignore. Life has a way of teaching lessons we never expect. This story reminds us that we can turn our pain into strength and take control of our destiny. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and share Elder Tales stories so you never miss such emotional and shocking tales.